What if the greatest lost city never vanished beneath the waves, but vanished from our memory? What if Atlantis was not only a place on a map, but a way of tuning the human spirit, an operating frequency we once held and slowly forgot? Tonight, we follow the oldest thread we have and ask a subversive question. If a civilization rose by aligning its inner world with natural law, could we recognize its echo in our own time? Plato leaves us the first clear doorway. He speaks of a maritime power beyond the Pillars of Heracles, an island culture of remarkable order, with concentric rings of land and sea, canals and causeways, laws carved in orichalcum, and a capital that glittered in daylight. He doesn't treat the story like a fairy tale. He treats it like a memory passed down from Egyptian priests to Solon and finally to him. In his telling, Atlantis became formidable because it paired ability with balance, an ethic of proportion, and it fell for the most predictable reason in history. Its character decayed faster than its power. Pride arrived first, catastrophe followed after. Whether one reads Plato as allegory or as a messenger, the timing is haunting. Across cultures, there are stories that rhyme with his, memories of a golden age that ended in water, ash, or silence, Mesoamerican accounts of drowned lands, Indian cycles remembering world ages, Pacific traditions whispering of continents that slipped under the horizon, Egyptian hints of a wisdom that did not begin with the dynasties but was inherited, guarded, and slowly transcribed into stone. None of this settles a courtroom case, but it forms a shape, a chorus more interesting than a single voice. The portrait that emerges in esoteric streams is not of machines as we know them, but of a technology that married consciousness to method. Sound was not just music, it was a tool for shaping matter and mood. Light was not only illumination, it was a carrier of intention. Geometry was not only measurement, it was a language of harmony. Stone itself was not dead. It was a partner with resonance and memory. Crystals, aligned and cut with care, were said to store patterns and stabilize fields. Temples were tuned like instruments. Chambers were designed to amplify subtle frequencies. Monuments aligned with stars, as if the sky and the earth were one instrument played across seasons. This picture may sound foreign, yet traces of it survive in places we overlook. A chant that calms the body. A drum that unknots grief. A cathedral whose proportions quiet the mind before a single prayer is spoken. The human nervous system is an orchestra. Its rhythms speed up and slow down with sound, light, and breath. Perhaps the Atlantean art was a disciplined version of what we feel every day. Inner state is responsive, and coherence can be engineered. The danger is built into the wonder. If you discover how to move energy, soon you discover how to move other people. If you learn to harmonize a community, soon you are tempted to control it. Traditions speak of a split within Atlantis, one current dedicated to unity and service, the other seduced by control and spectacle. The tools did not change. The intention did. What once healed became leverage. What once aligned became a net. The civilization did not fall because storms came first. It fell because the center stopped holding. The sea only finished what the spirit had already surrendered. The aftermath is not all ruin. Scattered accounts suggest survivors carrying fragments of knowledge to new shores. Not textbooks, not blueprints, but seeds, myths, symbols, and disciplines planted in temples and schools. Where a full language cannot be carried, a symbol can. Where a city cannot be rebuilt, a proportion can be taught. You see this whisper in sacred geometry, circle and vesica, triangle and square, the way proportional systems appear in shrines, mosques, cathedrals, and pyramids. You see it in architecture that invites the body into stillness by form alone. You see it in mysteries taught in steps, with vows to use power as a servant, not as a master. There is also the possibility, uncomfortable but compelling, that memory is not bound to artifacts. People speak of standing at certain sites and feeling something, not imagined but present. A density of attention, a clarity of air, a quiet that does not come from silence but from order. They talk about dreams that push them to study pattern and number, not for calculation, but for meaning. They are not all specialists or believers. They are simply human beings who notice that some places behave like tuning forks for the heart. Skeptics will say that all of this is poetry stitched to coincidence. They might be right, but a society is not only proven by stones, it is also proven by its artifacts and consciousness, by the behaviors and intuitions that persist like fossils of the mind. If so many cultures remember an ethical fall before a physical one, if so many traditions remember harmony before spectacle, perhaps the Atlantis story survives because it describes a mechanism, not an episode. It warns that power without purpose breaks its own vessel. It reminds us that collapse is less an event than a trajectory. Consider how directly the mirror faces us. We live with dazzling tools that bend light, sound, attention, and matter. We communicate at the speed of thought. We model the sky and the cell. Yet the deeper problem remains ancient. We often point these tools at each other without remembering what they are for. We optimize, but we rarely align. We extract, but we forget how to pay attention. We scale, but we seldom center. The Atlantean warning is not a superstition. It is a diagnostic. Misused power erodes character, and eroded character invites catastrophe. But there is another current in the legend, and it is the one that matters if you are listening now. Atlantis is also a map, and maps are meant to be used. If the old stories describe a frequency, a standard of inner order that made higher arts possible, then the first experiment is simple and personal. Restore order where you stand. You do not need a temple to test this. You have breath, posture, voice, and attention. You can learn the feel of coherence the way a musician learns pitch. Try an ordinary evening as a laboratory. Sit quietly and hum a single tone until it smooths out in your chest. Notice when the tone becomes easier to sustain and your breath lengthens on its own. That ease is coherence. Or go outside after sunset. Look for the bright anchor stars you know, then the fainter ones you normally ignore. Let your eyes hold the larger pattern. The mind loosens in the presence of scale. Small concerns rearrange themselves when you watch the sky for 10 honest minutes. Or learn to draw a circle with a compass, and then the simple shapes that grow from it. The vesica, the equilateral triangle, the hexagon. As you draw, observe not only the lines, but your state. The act of constructing order pulls on the interior in ways that are hard to explain and easy to feel. None of these are proofs, they are invitations. They offer you a direct taste of what the legends insist an entire culture once practiced with mastery, using form, sound, and intention to cultivate an elevated baseline. From that baseline, other things become possible: clearer thinking, steadier feeling, kinder action. The origin myths of many schools do not begin with thunderbolts. They begin with posture, breath, attention, and a geometry lesson. There is also a human reason the Atlantis story does not die. It returns to us in times when we sense that ability is outrunning wisdom. It returns when spectacle outshouts stillness, when power outpaces purpose. It is a pressure on the conscience of a species that knows it can do more and fears it will choose less. To speak of Atlantis as a frequency is not to float away from the real world. It is to insist that the real world includes the interior one. Civilizations are built first in the invisible: values, agreements, habits, and only later in stone. Imagine, then, that the oldest work on Earth is not to resurrect a city, but to restore a signal. Imagine that the reason the story keeps knocking is that the transmitter was never outside us. We are the instrument. We are the room that can be tuned. When enough lives ring true, a culture begins to harmonize. When a culture harmonizes, its tools become extensions of care, not fear. The cataclysm we dread is not inevitable. It is the downstream consequence of what we practice every day. It is fair to ask for evidence. It is also fair to ask for experience. If a story gives you a method for becoming more honest, more present, more whole, then the story is already doing work a ruin could never do. The paradox of Atlantis is that even if it were only allegory, it would still be one of the most practical stories we possess. It tells you exactly where to look when you want your life to stop breaking. Begin where alignment is possible, then build out from there. And yet, there is joy in the thought that fragments of a real place survive beneath silt and coral, waiting for careful hands. There is joy in the idea that some chamber somewhere still hums softly at a frequency that calms blood pressure and clears thought. There is joy in the idea that a crystal once used to stabilize a field could still ring if you sang the right note. But the greater joy is available now, without archaeology. The recognition that the same laws that order stars can order a day, and that a civilization is nothing more and nothing less than a steady agreement to live by those laws together. If Atlantis rose on the strength of that agreement and fell when it forgot, then the choice in front of us is not antique. It is local and immediate. We can live as if alignment is a luxury, or we can live as if it is the prerequisite for everything else. We can use our tools to distract ourselves from the work, or we can use them to serve the work. We can keep asking where the city went, or we can ask whether its standard is visible in the mirror. Some legends are warnings, some are maps. The best are both. Atlantis is a mirror that does not flatter, but it is also a key. Turn it, and the door leads in two directions at once, into the past that may have been, and into the future that could be. The frequency is not locked. The instrument is in your hands. This is Legends Reborn. If the old stories still breathe, it is only because we do. The city you're searching for may be closer than the tide and nearer than the horizon. Start with a breath. Start with a note. Start with a line you can draw true, and then draw another. Keep going until the room begins to sing.